Hello, I'm Fernando. You're watching a series of videos where I'm researching and designing and building the vehicle assembly building in Minecraft Survival. Last video we designed the exterior. Today we'll look at some of the interior. Doing image searches of the interior kind of find out a lot of things. So part of this is a kind of an incremental exercise in learning more and more, and then the more you learn, the more you can understand what you're seeing, and then the more these images start to kind of plug in pieces of the puzzle. So there's some pretty cool kind of 3D sketches. Um, some of these ones here were pretty valuable, or pretty invaluable. Um, and just for kind of understanding a little bit and getting a sense of, okay, so inside it there's a lot of these kind of struts or scaffolding or metal, whatever these things are. And then also kind of from here you can see, okay, this thing is primarily built up of 4 high bays for building the rockets, and then on the outside those doors that we were seeing, kind of they opened up and the rockets would come out of them. That was, interestingly, there was a design with 6 bays instead of 4, but they went with the 4-bay version. And there's all sorts of little bits of clues about what some of these things might be, uh, which is just kind of interesting to look around and find. Um, Particularly this diagram, which actually ultimately comes from the Saturn V user manual. So I have that somewhere saved. Yeah, the flight manual here. So the flight manual for the Saturn V actually has. It's pretty crazy. You can just get all of this stuff online as well, but here it has. That's where that picture comes from of the VAB interior. But there's a really good site. Let me see if I can find the link to that one. So it was off of a French forum here, and this here turned out to be a really useful area. So you can kind of see the high bays, and these are labeled as Bay 1, Bay 2, Bay 3, Bay 4, as well as the towers in between, or kind of Tower A, Tower B, Tower C, D, E, F, and then these bits in here are called, this is the low bay area, and there are these 8 checkout cells, as well as area or LKMNN as well. So yeah, so there's kind of enough to kind of piece some bits together on what they might be used for. There's a really good diagram which I refer to a bit. See if I can find that one. Where is it? Not so much that one. I guess one of the things that I found quite interesting is when they use these high bays, what they have is they have these kind of side platforms that come in and surround the rocket, so they can just work on it. So you can kind of see these platforms. So here they're kind of they're pulled back, but actually when they're building the rocket itself, they're kind of pulled in, and they can just work on it. There's a good picture of that somewhere. Kind of here you can see all these platforms that are nice and closed up around it. So this this image ended up being way more important than I realized. I've just got a big page where I collect all these images and for kind of later referral, but it was quite cool to see that you've actually got lots more specification about what these things are and kind of the sizing that becomes important a little bit later on. But there was a key image which is, it's actually this one, but there's a better version of it somewhere online that I'll find. I think it might be this one here, and this is from Expeditions to the Moon, Chapter 6, and I have a high res version of this from somewhere. I don't think it's from that particular site. But this is really cool because you can see some of the internal stuff and get a real sense for what's inside. So what I wanted to do then, right, is I had kind of the outside, and this is the point where I was actually pretty happy with the outside. I cleaned it up a bunch. I'd worked out for the flag how to fit the right number of stars in. I think maybe it's a little bit out of proportion, but ultimately you're looking at it from an angle anyway, so I don't think you'll notice too much. And right now this doesn't have a lot of, I was kind of playing, well, I've ended up changing the material on these doors a number of times, including a number of times after building them in survival and then ripping them down and rebuilding them. But in here, I was playing a lot with these kind of first three struts based on the image, right? So based on, if we think back to this one, right, I can see they're kind of 1, 2, 3 there. So going through that and just playing a lot with different kind of tower designs. I played with different materials. I ended up settling on polished basalt, and I quite like it because it looks a bit like a pencil sketch to me. And then I put a bunch of end rods in everywhere, mainly because I was quite worried about this whole place being a bit too dark, but also mob protection because I am playing in survival, or building this in survival. And then just kind of putting in a placeholder. So there's actually, one of the things this thing has is there's this thing is called the transfer aisle down the middle here, and that crane goes the whole way down here, so it can carry bits of rocket ships and all sorts of fun things all the way down. So this is actually the point. I also just put some lights in the floor, just some sea lanterns, really for mob protection. They're not actually in anything that I've seen. It doesn't quite make sense, but you've got to work with what you've got to work with. So this was the point where I said, right, the design is ready, and I started to build it in survival. Interestingly, having grey concrete powder as the floor meant that before I could build this thing in survival, I actually needed to put down a dirt floor under the floor. And it's actually quite big. That in itself took quite a long time, which started to scare me with the size of what it is I'm undertaking here. But yeah, this is where it was at that point. So I started a quest to try and work out what is in these side buildings. So area L, area K, area N, and area M. In this image here, like, it's pretty clear that there are kind of rooms or partitions. I spent a lot of time just looking, trying to find any pictures or any mention of what's in them. But this layout I think was a good clue, and I was really keen to get this into Minecraft. So I ended up taking kind of a layout of a picture of what I built so far and overlaying it here, and then I was able to go through and start to lay out in yellow where all of those rooms were. So let me show you that one. So here you can see I'm also starting to build up a little bit more. I've also changed the design of this front panel and the design of the door. Started to build some of the side doors and filling out some of these internal panels a little bit more, but more importantly, working through just kind of where these walls will be. So this is just more temporary stuff while I work out what should actually be here. Now, so one of the exciting things that I figured out was actually that Google Street View went inside the vehicle assembly building, or goes inside the vehicle assembly building. And so now this became much more of a just building the vehicle assembly building to actually let's make this as accurate as we can. And so the real challenge began. So let me show you that. So here's Street View, and it's pretty cool. You can look around, we can go inside, we can start to see somewhere in the low bay now, and we can see some of these checkout cells. And we can keep going down, and we can start to see all sorts of interesting inside bits. And kind of you can keep going all the way down, and now we're in the high bay, and you can look up and you can see these things, and kind of get glimpses of what might be in some of these side things. And look, there's a 2 because that's high bay 2, that's tower A. Kind of everything's labeled all the way down. I spent a lot of time just in Street View looking at every different angle. I can tell you that these cells are labeled here, for example, but they're not labeled here because of this thing. I actually now have a clue of what this might be, but that's for future discussions. So that was pretty exciting, right? And so once I figured this out, then it became, okay, well, let's see if we can figure out how to make this thing a lot more exact. So hey, here's a few ladders, and then these ladders go up, and then there's a door here, for example. And so if we flick back to Minecraft and we come in here, then you can see I'm starting, it looks like I've got some, I might have got these ladders in slightly the wrong place with the ladders and the up and the door, or maybe I'm standing here. Anyway, just trying to really work out, well, what are these things and where are they and why? So, for example, I spent a lot of time looking at these pillars, trying to work out what they must be, right? And there is a door here, and then if you come this way and we look up here, there's this kind of, looks like there's just doors the whole way up, which would make sense to me, because depending on what they're building, they relay this thing out, right? They'll actually put platforms in, or even like these platforms here. If we come over here, you can see that these platforms will fold down, and then they will be they'll kind of help them work on each section of the rocket at a time. So it's it's reusable. The other kind of core assumption that I'm making is, if you're going to make something on this scale, you would tend to just use repeating patterns everywhere. There's no point in having every different tower have a completely different function or purpose. It really would just be what it is. So there's kind of doors the whole way up. So I'm just going to make the assumption that this is probably stairs, right? So if we come into Minecraft, what I've done here is, here I've got kind of the doors the whole way up. And then here we can kind of come into here, and then I've just said, well, this might as well be stairs. I mean, I don't know exactly what it looks like, and I don't think I'll ever know exactly what it looks like in here. But this makes sense to me, right? You would just have stairs with some kind of doors to get out randomly, and then a lot of the rest of it is just kind of setting in a few things just to make it kind of interesting, right? Putting a few like pipes and beams, and using the end rods as kind of piping, I think makes a lot of sense, because it also gives me a bit of mob proofing and light. Okay, so the low bay is looking pretty good for now. Next video, we'll extend the transfer aisle down here, and also see if we can work out what's in these side areas. Any feedback, ideas, or encouragement you have, just let me know, and have a great day.